My name is AJ Sandal. I'm a part of Mr. Wiz Engineering Architecture 3 class, and I go to Joliet Central High School, and this is my Semester 1 projects. For all my Semester 1 projects, I was going to need to think about how I was going to start. That way I can have overall concepts of my designs and make sure that all my designs were going to be realistic and have one-to-one dimensions. That's why I was able to use AutoCAD. AutoCAD allowed me to bring what was on paper to existence. For example, here, these logos were taken on paper and I was able to design them in AutoCAD. And this is an example of my first project and how it came out. Here we can see the engraving happening. And in this video, we can see the laser cutting of the sign being cut. Like anything, there was going to be errors. Since this was a custom base I made sure I had to make sure it fit inside of the space of the translucent acrylic plastic Mr. West gave me. My first cut paper design was too big on the space given, therefore I had to scale it down. This is my next project I did. For my next few projects, I had to think of what I was interested in and what was appealing to me. I had to think about how I was going to recreate those ideas on paper into Autodesk Inventor, which is what I used for this project. I needed to create a realistic view of what it was going to look like and how big the dimensions were going to be. And this is what I did. The next step was to making everything that I sketched into Inventor using the dimensions I had. I did the letters separate, that way I can position them wherever I want. And Inventor gave me a lot more freedom to do what I was thinking. I used the Bamboo Lab software to make these, and I was able to use this software to my advantage. Mr. West provided a list of Bamboo Lab videos to watch about how the 3D printing software works, and I was able to follow the steps in order. The idea of learning how to use the 3D printer was definitely very useful, and it made me realize how important it is to follow the engineering process. And this is a video of how it's going out. As you can see, it was the beginning stages of the keychain. Now for my next project I had in mind for second semester was a 3D printed Pokeball. I followed the same engineering design process rules and converted my ideas from sketches to modeling, and then converted it into a real life drawing And the only way to do that was to use Inventor, since I was going to 3D print this. From previous practice of using the Bamboo Lab software, I was able to 3D print this with no problem, until future problems inside of the Pokeball filling occurred later on. Besides that point, I learned how to add filament all around the object, and I got comfortable using this even more from my last project. Like always, when learning something new, there was gonna be something that was gonna happen. And that time, it was this on the right picture right here, as you can see. Tree supports were added, and this was a clear example of when something went wrong. The infill of my design was too weak, so I started to add tree supports, and this was going to just ultimately make my Pokeball have really bad structure if I were to let it print. That's why Mr. West paused it and recommended me to just fill it and make it solid instead of trying to make it hollow. And this is how my finished 3D printed Pokeball that was solid came out. It was much more heavy, but it was way more structurally composed. My next project was already a project I had in mind. While I was wrapping up my Pokeball, it was a custom 3D printed keychain for my dad. He was really intrigued with the way my Pokeball came out, so he wanted me to make something cooler. That's what he told me, which was the name. This was the name he wanted to make. He wanted to base it off of the first initials of me and my sister. I used previous knowledge about the Bamboo Lab software to 3D print this. I learned how to use the software properly and adjust the settings for smoother and quicker prints. For testing purposes, I needed to make sure that before I gave it to my dad, that it fit onto my keys, and it sure did. I was happy with the way it came out because the letters weren't too far out or out of center, which was nice. And for my last project, since winter was approaching and the holidays are coming up, I had an idea in mind, and that was to make a Christmas decoration like a plaque for my family to hang up. I needed to brainstorm how big I want my design to be and what software I was going to be using, whether it was laser cutting or Bamboo Lab. Dimensions needed to be intact and realistic, and I saw that most were 11 inches by 11 inches. The next step was to design my ideas and go beyond what's on paper to convert it into a real life prototype. The only way to do that is through AutoCAD. I began to think of what exactly I wanted my plaque to look like, and I began drafting. Sadly, as the laser cutter started to engrave, I was watching it engrave, and the light bulb in the top right corner began to burn, which was probably due to how thick the wood was. Besides that, everything else turned out really nice, and I was ready to show my family what our next Christmas decoration was going to be. And this was a picture of how the wooden plaque came out. I would like to thank my engineering and architecture 3 classmates and Mr. West's previous students for helping me with ideas to make all my projects and give me tips on future projects for laser cutting and 3D printing. Thank you.